It started with a woman in silence, two men, a pair of hands reaching for her bag, and a crowd that only watched. Then he stepped forward. A quiet man in an old military jacket. No badge, no shouting, just one question. Do you consent? What happened next would shake an entire city, expose a hidden power, and spark a national conversation. All because a single dad refused to stay silent. The mall was alive with the late afternoon buzz. Families browsing fall jackets, teens laughing over sodas, elderly couples strolling hand in hand beneath glowing store signs. But at the heart of it all, near the entrance to a high-end boutique, a small crowd had begun to form. It started with a shout. "Ma'am, don't move!" Heads turned, phones lifted. Three men in dark jackets had surrounded a woman in a navy blazer and jeans. She stood still, just outside the boutique's glass doors, a paper shopping bag dangling loosely from her hand. Her dark hair was neatly pulled back, her posture straight. There was no panic in her eyes, only something colder, sharper. "I said put your hands where we can see them." One of the men barked. Another reached into his jacket, the threat implicit. People stopped mid-step. Cameras rolled. Some whispered. Others hovered silently, waiting for a scene. There was no music in the mall now, just the sound of nervous breaths. The woman did not speak. She didn't resist. Her hands slowly lifted to shoulder height. "I didn't steal anything," she said calmly, her voice barely above the hum of air conditioning. "Check the receipt in my bag." But none of the men reached for it. "We got a call," the tallest man sneered. "Your attitude isn't helping." And then he grabbed her by the arm. That's when a different voice cut through the noise. Calm, measured male. "Sir, did you identify yourselves before laying hands on her?" The crowd parted slightly. A man stepped forward from the edge of the bystanders, tall, with sun-browned skin and long, dark hair pulled loosely behind his neck. He wore a faded green military jacket, the kind issued to Marines a generation ago. A canvas messenger bag hung at his side. His boots were scuffed. His eyes, however, were clear as steel. At his side stood a little girl no more than 7, holding a melting ice cream cone in one hand and a small stuffed bear in the other. Her eyes were locked on the scene unfolding before her, too serious for her age. The men turned. The one gripping the woman's arm narrowed his eyes. "Sir, this doesn't concern you." The man didn't flinch. "Actually, it does. You interfering with private business." The grip tightened. "No," he said simply. "I'm asking a legal question." One of the bystanders, a middle-aged man in a work vest, muttered, "Think he's a lawyer or something." The tall man stepped forward, face hard. "Back away, sir. This is security business." "She's suspected of shoplifting." The man's voice remained steady. "And yet she hasn't resisted. She offered her receipt. She's not fleeing. You haven't identified yourselves properly. You're about to make a procedural mistake on camera." Several phones angled closer. The woman looked over her shoulder, her expression unreadable. The shorter security man pointed at the newcomer. "Last warning." The man turned to the woman. "Ma'am, do you consent to a search of your person or belongings?" The woman gave him a slow, deliberate nod. "Yes, I do." He turned back to the security men. "Then under Illinois law, unless you suspect imminent danger or destruction of evidence, you're required to conduct that search with minimal physical contact. Otherwise, it's assault under Section 720-512-3. Silence. The taller man hesitated. "Who are you?" The man calmly reached into the inside pocket of his weathered jacket. A ripple of tension moved through the crowd. One of the onlookers instinctively took a step back, but what emerged wasn't a weapon. It was a small leather ID case, its corners worn from years of use. He flipped it open. "Marine veteran legal advisor, retired. Nathan Reed, serial number 42788. There was a murmur among the crowd. "Reed, that name sounds familiar." The security men paused. One looked at the other, unsure now. The moment was cracking. The little girl tugged on her father's sleeve. "Daddy, are they bad guys?" He crouched beside her, gently whispering something only she could hear. She nodded and clutched his arm. The woman, still silent, watched the scene. Her expression hadn't changed, but there was something new in her eyes. Curiosity, recognition. The tall security man, chest puffed with wounded pride, turned back toward her. "You still need to come with us." "On what charge?" Nathan asked. Suspicion won't hold, especially not with a dozen witnesses filming you. And the security man hesitated again, and then slowly the woman reached into her own bag. The shorter man twitched, moving for something in his jacket. Easy, Nathan said, one arm gently lifting in front of the girl, the other slightly extended toward the men, non-threatening but firm. She told you she had a receipt. What she pulled out wasn't a receipt, it was a business card. She held it chest high. Alexandra Carter, VP of Internal Investigations, Carter Industries. Gasps. The taller man's face drained of color. The other two stepped back instinctively as if someone had pulled the floor out from beneath them. Alexandra Carter looked at them coldly. You're all fired. Effective immediately. No one moved for a full beat. The mall was silent. No voices, no phones, no whispers. Even the background music hadn't returned. And then the ripple began. Clapping. First one person, then another and another. And somewhere in the crowd, someone whispered what everyone was thinking. Who is that guy? It was the silence that hit hardest. After Alexandra Carter displayed her business card, and it felt like even the air held its breath. The mall, which moments ago buzzed with tension, now stood in still awe. The three security men looked as if the floor had vanished beneath them. All authority drained from their posture. Nathan Reed didn't move. He didn't need to. The look in his eyes said enough. Not arrogance, not anger, but something older, quieter, a strength that didn't shout. The tallest security man opened his mouth, then closed it again. Words failed. The shorter one reached for his radio, but his hand dropped before making contact. And in the middle of it all, Alexandra Carter turned slowly and looked directly at Nathan. Not as an executive, not as a suspect, but as a woman who just witnessed someone step into the fire for her without being asked. Their eyes locked, and for a moment she seemed to study him. Not his face, but his stillness, his calm, his control. He gave a respectful nod. She held his gaze for half a second longer before turning back to the security men. All three of you badges and radios on the floor now, she said, voice low but sharper than any shout. Go wait outside. Your supervisor will be contacted within the hour. The tall one hesitated. But ma'am, her tone cut through him like a blade. Outside. They left, shoulders slumped, pride shattered. The crowd was no longer filming, they were watching history. Alexandra exhaled slowly, then reached into her bag and pulled out her receipt. She held it out to a nearby mall security guard who had finally dared to approach. He scanned it, checked the timestamp, the itemized list, and nodded. It's clean, he muttered before quickly stepping back. Alexandra turned again toward Nathan. The little girl by his side was now holding tight to his coat sleeve, her eyes wide, unsure if they should stay or leave. Alexandra took a step closer, her voice softened just enough. You didn't have to do that. Nathan looked at her, his tone steady but quiet. Didn't do it for you. That gave her pause. I did it because they crossed a line. Whether you're a company executive or a store clerk, you deserve due process and dignity. The crowd was slowly dispersing now. Some whispered, others offered nods of gratitude to Nathan as they passed. The moment had ended, but something about it had settled in everyone's bones. Alexandra studied him again. You're not just a veteran, she said. You quoted procedure like you wrote it. He gave a small, almost shy smile. Let's just say I've had time to read the fine print. The little girl tugged his sleeve again. He leaned down beside her. You all right, pumpkin? She nodded. That lady, she's strong. Alexandra gave a soft smile, the first genuine one since the ordeal began. So are you, sweetheart. The girl smiled, then whispered something in Nathan's ear. He chuckled. She wants to know if you're a superhero. Alexandra raised an eyebrow. That depends on the day. Nathan extended his hand. Nathan Reed. She shook it firmly. Alexandra Carter. You off duty, Ms. Carter? He asked, just a hint of warmth in his voice. I am now. A pause, then he added, would you like a coffee? It wasn't a flirtation. It wasn't even small talk. It was a bridge. Alexandra looked at the little girl beside him, her innocent eyes, her quiet strength, and then back at Nathan. I think I'd like that, she said, but only if your little one approves. The girl beamed. They walked toward the small coffee shop at the corner of the mall atrium, footsteps echoing softly. Alexandra moved beside Nathan. Not behind, not ahead. Beside. "Do you always do that?" she asked quietly as they walked. "What step between people and danger?" He paused. "Not always. Just when my gut says I can't walk away and still sleep at night." "You were calm," she said, "even when they reached for whatever was in their jackets." Nathan looked straight ahead. "I've seen worse." There was no bravado in his tone, no drama, just truth. Alexandra didn't press further. She could tell whatever he had seen was locked behind doors she didn't have the key to. Not yet. At the coffee shop, Nathan ordered a hot chocolate for his daughter and black coffee for himself. Alexandra took green tea. They sat at a booth overlooking the indoor fountain. The mall resumed its rhythms. Music returned. People passed by, most unaware of what had just unfolded only minutes ago. But the three of them sat quietly, not speaking much, but not needing to. Finally, Alexandra asked, "What made you speak up?" Nathan didn't answer right away. He sipped his coffee, looked at his daughter, then back at Alexandra. "I've been in places where silence was deadly. I promised myself that if I ever made it home, I'd never be quiet again when someone's rights were being trampled." Alexandra looked at him, really looked, and for the first time her expression softened fully. No company title, no shield, just a woman seeing a man who carried invisible scars. "You kept your promise," she whispered. He nodded once. "I tried to." She reached into her coat and placed something on the table. It was her card. "If you ever need anything, or if you ever just want to talk." Nathan didn't pick it up immediately. He didn't have to. He had already heard something louder than a business card or a title. He had heard a thank you, the kind that didn't need to be said aloud. And somewhere in the back of the food court, a high schooler who had recorded the whole thing was uploading the clip to TikTok with the caption, "Single dad stands up for woman harassed by security." Woman was not who they thought. The world was about to notice. The video had barely been online 10 minutes before it started spreading like wildfire. TikTok, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram. Single dad veteran corrects security thugs on camera. Turns out she's not just any woman. Marine steps between woman and injustice. You won't believe who she is. Back in the mall, though, none of that mattered. Not yet. Nathan Reed sat quietly across from Alexandra Carter at the corner booth of the small coffee shop. His daughter Lily sat between them, swinging her legs under the table, focused on her cocoa and bear-shaped marshmallows floating inside it. Alexandra held her teacup with both hands. For someone who just fired 3 security contractors in public and revealed her executive position in the middle of a shopping mall, she seemed tired, not shaken, just weary, like someone who'd carried a weight alone for too long. "You asked me something earlier," she said, voice calm. "You asked if I consented to be searched." Nathan nodded, eyes steady. She leaned back slightly. "Most people wouldn't think to ask that in the middle of chaos. Most people haven't been in rooms where a simple yes or no changes the outcome of someone's life," he replied. She tilted her head. "Military, Marine Corps," he said. 14 years. Legal branch the last 7. "That explains the calm." He chuckled, but there was no pride in it. Calm is easy when you've already lived through the worst. There was a pause between them. Not awkward, but heavy with meaning. Nathan continued, "The moment they laid hands on you, I knew they hadn't followed procedure. You weren't resisting. No weapon, no immediate threat. But they grabbed you anyway." "And if I hadn't had my card," she asked. "I would have asked the same question," he said. "Do you consent?" That question matters, not because it stops them, but because it records that you knew your rights, that someone saw you. Alexandra set her tea down and folded her arms. "You always this calm under pressure?" Nathan smiled. "No, but I've learned to slow things down when everyone else speeds up." The little girl beside him looked up. "Daddy." "Yes, sweetie." "Did you teach that question to Mommy too?" Nathan paused just long enough that Alexandra noticed. He placed a gentle hand on his daughter's back. "Mommy already knew a lot," he said softly. "She was smart like you." Alexandra didn't press. She knew the tone. Loss was a universal language. She'd heard it too many times from victims' families, from colleagues returning from tragedy, and sometimes in her own mirror. "I teach that question to everyone I can," Nathan added. "It's one of the few things that still levels the playing field." The little girl, now distracted by marshmallows, looked content. Nathan turned back to Alexandra. "Why were you shopping alone today?" he asked. She raised a brow. You want the official answer or the real one? Real. I was investigating a pattern, she said. Our security contractors targeting women of color in upscale stores. I've received 4 anonymous complaints in 3 weeks. No camera footage. No official reports, just intimidation and silence. Nathan sat up straighter. So you were bait? She nodded. I walked into 5 stores, didn't buy anything in the first 4, then finally picked up a purse here and lingered near the exit long enough to see if anyone would approach me. Took them less than 4 minutes. And they didn't recognize you? No, I've never worked with those 3 before. I wasn't expecting a physical confrontation, though. Figured they'd follow me or call store security, not go straight to detainment. He shook his head, jaw clenched. And yet you stayed calm. Alexandra gave a small wry smile. Just like you. They shared a moment, both knowing what it cost to keep still when every part of you wants to shout. Knowing what it meant to let it happen just long enough to expose the truth. From the far end of the cafe, a security guard appeared walking cautiously toward their booth. He looked like he'd drawn the short straw. Ms. Carter, Alexandra turned slowly. Yes. There are reporters gathering outside the west entrance. I think someone leaked the footage already. She sighed and stood smoothing her blazer. Nathan rose with her. I didn't mean to turn your Saturday into a media storm, she said softly. He looked at her serious. You didn't. The system did. You just happened to get caught in the gears today. She nodded, then glanced down at the little girl. What's her name? Lily, Nathan said. Alexandra crouched beside the girl, who looked up curiously. You were very brave today, Lily, she said, and you have a very good daddy. Lily giggled and whispered, he's not just good, he's the boss of bad guys. Alexandra laughed genuinely. I bet he is. She stood up and looked at Nathan. I'm going to be dealing with this fallout for a few days. But if I send you a message, would you pick up? He held her gaze. Depends on the message. There was that spark again. Not flirtation, but recognition. 2 people who had seen too much, stood too long, and finally found someone else who understood silence better than noise. I'll keep it legal, she said with a smirk. I'll allow it, he replied. She left without another word, disappearing into the hum of the mall, her business card still on the table. Nathan watched her go, not like a man chasing something, but like a soldier acknowledging an equal. And then he looked down at his daughter. Ready to head home, Lily? She wiped cocoa off her lip and nodded. Can I tell Miss Kelly at school that you stopped bad guys? He smiled. You can tell her we asked the right question. As they walked toward the exit, Nathan's phone buzzed. A text from an old friend, another vet who ran a community watch group in Southside Chicago. You went viral, brother. You're on the front page of Reddit. Nathan exhaled. He hadn't wanted this, but maybe it was time someone like him stood in the light again. By nightfall, the video had over 4 million views. It was reposted by veterans pages, civil rights activists, and legal scholars alike. A thread on Twitter dissected the man's calm use of procedural law. A former federal prosecutor commented, textbook de-escalation. Whoever this man is, he knows what he's doing. And yet he hadn't posted a word himself. Not one photo, not one caption. Nathan Reed didn't need to. He wasn't interested in headlines. But that didn't stop the world from asking the same question over and over. Who is this guy? Sunday morning came quietly. The sun slipped through the blinds of the small, rented house on the edge of Evanston. In the modest kitchen, Nathan was flipping pancakes while Lily sat at the table coloring a picture of a bear holding an American flag. Her hair was still messy from sleep, her voice small but full of thought. Daddy, why did everyone look at you like that yesterday? He glanced back. What do you mean, when you talk to those men, it's like they didn't know what to do? Nathan flipped a pancake. That's because they didn't. Was it because of your voice? He smiled. Maybe a little. Lily paused, tapping her crayon to her chin. Or maybe they knew you were a boss before. That gave him pause. He placed the spatula down and turned toward her. A boss. Yeah, like in the army. You helped the people, right? I tried. She looked satisfied and returned to her drawing, but Nathan's smile faded slowly. He didn't talk about his time in uniform, not because he was ashamed, but because too many people only saw the medals, not the shadows behind them. After breakfast, he checked his phone. 27 unread messages, 3 voicemails, Two unknown numbers in a single email with the subject line, Mr. Reed, urgent press request. He deleted it without opening, but the questions kept coming even in person. At the grocery store later that day, a woman in her 60s approached him by the canned beans aisle. "Excuse me," she said, eyes squinting. "Were you at the North Shore Mall yesterday?" Nathan nodded politely. "I was." "You're the one in that video, the one who stopped those security men." He gave a modest shrug. "Just tried to keep things from getting worse." "Well," she said, placing a hand on her chest, "you made us proud. My husband was Army. He'd have saluted you." Nathan nodded gently. "Thank you, ma'am." As she walked away, Lily looked up at him. "They're going to keep asking, aren't they?" He ruffled her hair. "Probably." Outside the store, another voice called out, this one less friendly. "Hey, Marine boy." Nathan turned. Two men were standing near a parked pickup, one of them holding a phone already recording. "You think you can just embarrass hard-working security and walk away?" the man sneered. "Bet you were dishonorably discharged. That's why you're hiding now." Lily moved behind her father, clutching his coat. Nathan's voice was calm. "You don't want to do this in front of my daughter." "Oh, we're just asking questions," the man said with a grin. "You were so confident yesterday. Where's that legal knowledge now?" The other man laughed, still filming. Nathan stepped forward, slow, controlled, not threatening, just present. He looked straight into the lens. "Turn off the camera." The man hesitated now. Something in Nathan's tone made his fingers fumble. The screen went black. Then Nathan stepped closer, only a foot away from the man holding the phone. "My name is Nathan Reed, retired Marine legal advisor for multiple military investigations, including internal misconduct cases no one wanted to talk about. I don't answer to threats, and I don't flinch at cowards hiding behind cameras. You want to ask a question? Do it like a man." Silence. The air between them shifted. The men backed away without another word. Nathan didn't smile, didn't gloat. He simply took Lily's hand and walked away. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the quiet neighborhood, Nathan sat alone on the porch. A soft knock broke the silence. He opened the door to find a familiar face. Alexandra Carter, not in business attire, just jeans and a dark blue sweater. Her corporate badge wasn't visible, but her presence still commanded attention. "I thought I might find you here," she said. Nathan stepped aside without a word. They sat on the porch steps, watching the sky shift into twilight. Lily played in the yard, chasing shadows with a stick, like it was a sword. "I saw the video," Alexandra said. "Which one?" "The one where you told a man to turn off his phone. People are calling it your second viral moment." Nathan exhaled. "I didn't ask for any of this." "I know," she said. "That's what makes it matter." He looked at her. "You came to ask something." She nodded. "People are digging. Background checks searching old case files. Your name's popping up in military archives I didn't know were public." "I figured that might happen." "I can help you stay ahead of it," she offered. "Get your record sealed. Keep the press away." Nathan shook his head. "No, I'm not hiding anymore." Alexandra studied him this time, not with suspicion, but respect. "Then maybe it's time people finally knew who you were." He looked at her, tired but firm. "Let them ask." And as night fell over the quiet street, the answer to the question the world was shouting became clearer. He wasn't just a veteran. He wasn't just a single dad. He was a man who had once walked through fire and now stood still, not for fame, not for credit, but because it was right. Monday morning arrived with a stillness that felt off. No bird song, no passing school buses, just a strange kind of hush outside the small, rented house where Nathan Reed lived with his daughter, Lily. Inside, Lily stood in front of the mirror in her tiny bedroom. She was wearing her favorite backpack, the one with a faded unicorn patch and a missing zipper, and was carefully brushing her hair like her mom used to do. Nathan watched from the doorway, unnoticed for a moment. She was trying to be brave. He knew that look. He'd worn it himself once the day his platoon leader didn't come back. She turned and spotted him. "Is the world going to be weird again today?" she asked. He paused, then knelt beside her. "It might," he said gently. Lily thought about that for a long second. "Will they talk about you at school?" "Probably." "Will they say bad things?" Nathan considered his answer. "Some might, some won't." "Will you be okay?" He smiled, brushing a stray lock of hair from her forehead. I'm always okay when I know you're watching. She nodded as if that settled it. And maybe it did. At school, things unfolded exactly as expected, and not. Lily's teacher, Miss Kelly, pulled her aside after morning show. I saw the video, sweetie, she said gently. Your daddy was very brave. Lily blinked. He just asked a question. Miss Kelly chuckled softly. Sometimes asking the right question is braver than yelling or fighting. Lily tilted her head. That's what Daddy said. Miss Kelly smiled. Then he's a very wise man. At recess, a few of the older kids pointed and whispered. Her dad's the guy who stopped those security guards. I saw him on TikTok. I think he used to be a spy or something. Lily ignored them. Instead, she sat under the big oak tree by herself sketching. She drew her father not with a cape, not holding a weapon, just standing, calm, watching, protecting. Back at the house, Nathan sat at the dining table with his laptop open. A cup of black coffee sat untouched beside a file folder marked Read N Confidential. He wasn't supposed to have it, but people in certain circles still respected his silence and occasionally his name. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost let it ring, then answered. Mr. Reed? A woman's voice. Professional but not robotic. This is Gerald Whitman's office at Carter Industries. Ms. Carter recommended we connect. Nathan leaned back. What for? She mentioned your involvement in the mall incident. She said you neutralized a volatile situation using lawful language and minimal force. Mr. Whitman was impressed. I didn't do it for Mr. Whitman, Nathan said flatly. There was a pause, then a different voice. Male older took over. Mr. Reed, this is Gerald Whitman speaking directly. Off the record, we need more men like you. Not in uniform, not carrying weapons, just present. I'm retired, Nathan replied. I know, but some posts don't require a badge. They just require trust. Think about it. Click. The line went dead. Nathan stared at the screen for a long moment. The cursor blinked back like a waiting breath. He closed the laptop. Later that afternoon, Alexandra arrived unannounced. She wore a black button-down shirt, hair tied back a folder in her hand, the same calm precision as always, but her eyes were softer today. Tired. Lily ran to the door when she heard the knock. Hi, the little girl beamed. Are you Captain Super Lady? Alexandra chuckled. Not officially, but I'll take it. She handed Lily a small book. Women Who Lead, filled with stories of female executives, scientists, and explorers. Thought you might like this, she said. Lily hugged it. Thank you. I'm going to read it to my bear. As the girl skipped away, Alexandra turned to Nathan. You okay? He shrugged. I'm not the one who's been on the news 6 times since Sunday. She raised an eyebrow. You've been on 7. They both chuckled and the tension softened. Alexandra pulled out the folder she brought. The 3 men, Reeves, Holden, and Turner. Blackwater Security has terminated their employment permanently. One's already suing. Nathan raised a brow. For what? Public humiliation? Alexandra gave a bitter smile. For emotional distress. Claims you instigated a social media attack. Nathan leaned back in his chair. I didn't even post the video. Doesn't matter, she said. Public opinion doesn't need permission anymore. She tapped her fingers on the folder thinking. Whitman wants you to come in. I figured. He also wants you to consider something, she added, an unofficial advisory position, civilian liaison, no badge, just presence. The kind that calms a room before it burns down. Nathan folded his arms. Sounds like a fancy way to say clean up our messes quietly. Alexandra didn't deny it, but she leaned forward, voice low. The system doesn't change from the outside. Nathan looked at her not with suspicion, but something closer to wariness. You still believe it can be fixed? She nodded. If I didn't, I'd have walked away a long time ago. They sat in silence until a small voice spoke up. Daddy? Lily stood at the edge of the hallway, her book clutched in one hand, eyes curious. Can she stay for dinner? Alexandra blinked. I don't want to intrude. You won't, Nathan said quietly. She watches everything, and lately she's been asking more questions than I can answer. Alexandra smiled gently. Then maybe we can both answer them together. Nathan hesitated, then nodded at once. Stay. And for the first time in days, something shifted. Not on the news, not in a courtroom, but in a home where healing often begins. where a little girl watches and learns what it means to stand up for what's right. Even if you're small, even if you're afraid, even if you just ask a question. It started with a murmur. A wave of whispers, soft but electric, snaked its way through the food court of North Shore Mall like a warning before a storm. She's back. That's the woman from the video. Is that her? The executive? No way. What's she doing here again? Alexandra Carter stood in front of the same boutique where the incident happened just days ago. She wore civilian clothes, dark jeans, a tailored black jacket, and no corporate badge was visible. Yet her posture was unmistakable. Spine straight, chin level calm, but alert. She wasn't here to shop. She was here to finish something. Nathan stood a few paces back, arms crossed, daughter Lily holding his hand tightly. He hadn't wanted to come. But Alexandra had called him that morning, her voice low and resolute. I need a witness I trust. Someone who doesn't flinch when things go sideways. And now they stood together, side by side once more. A former Marine and a woman carrying both a title and a burden. Inside the store, 3 uniformed security men were speaking with a manager. Nathan recognized one of them, Victor Reeves, the tall one from Saturday. He looked thinner, paler now, tired in a way men only get when the public spotlight burns too long. The mall's head of security approached Alexandra. Ms. Carter, are you sure you want to do this here? It's not a controlled setting. I know, she replied. He hesitated, glancing at the growing crowd. There are cameras everywhere now. I'm counting on that, she said, walking past him. She stepped forward, slowly crossing the invisible line between civilian anonymity and professional power. Her boots echoed against the marble floor like clock chimes counting down. Security Officer Reeves turned and froze. His colleagues, Holden and Turner, stiffened beside him. Nathan noticed it instantly, the subtle shift in weight, the slight touch toward their utility belts. Alexandra didn't blink. She stopped 3 feet from them and pulled something from her inside jacket pocket, a familiar black leather case. With one hand, she flipped it open. Alexandra Carter, Vice President of Internal Investigations, Carter Industries, badge 4728. A beat of total silence fell over the crowd. The kind of silence that feels like thunder in your chest. Gasps followed. Someone dropped their phone. A child whispered, "She's the boss." Security Officer Reeves visibly swallowed. Alexandra's voice was calm, but each word landed like a hammer on wet stone. Effective immediately per Carter Industries protocol, and pending the completion of an internal investigation, your company's contract with this mall has been permanently terminated. Turner took a step forward. You don't have the authority to... I have every legal authority outlined in Section 1058 of our corporate oversight policy, she interrupted. Would you like me to read it aloud? Her voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Nathan scanned the crowd. Phones were out, recording, capturing. And in that moment, power didn't look like the men in uniform. It looked like the woman who stood in plain clothes and owned the space. Reeves said nothing. He looked past her, then down at his boots, as if hoping the floor might open and swallow him whole. Mall security guards flanked the 3 men gently, not touching, not threatening, just a quiet barrier between what had been and what was now unfolding. Alexandra turned slightly, addressing the manager of the boutique. I'd like you to pull the store's internal footage from last Saturday. All camera angles, full audio. The manager nodded, nervous. Yes, ma'am. She turned to leave, and that's when Nathan stepped forward. Alexandra. She paused just slightly. You sure you want this to go public? He asked, voice low. She turned to face him. I didn't come here to create a headline, she said. I came here to restore one thing, dignity. He nodded slowly. I just hope the system's ready for what happens next. She looked at Lily, who was staring at her with wide, unblinking eyes. Then she knelt. I scared you that day, didn't I? She asked the girl softly. Lily nodded a little. But then you turned into a hero. Alexandra smiled. You know something. Sometimes grown-ups are scared too. We just hide it better. Lily stepped closer and did something unexpected. She hugged her tight like a child clinging to something solid in a world that felt unsure. Alexandra stood, cleared her throat gently, and turned back to the crowd. My name is Alexandra Carter. I serve as Vice President of Internal Investigations at Carter Industries. What happened here last Saturday should never have happened to me or to anyone. The crowd had grown dozens now. Some clapped, others held their hands over their hearts. But no one looked away. I won't comment further due to an active investigation, but let this moment serve as a reminder. Respect isn't optional. It's owed to every citizen, every child, every stranger you meet. Then she turned, stepped down off the platform of attention, and walked back toward Nathan. As she reached him, he spoke without fanfare. You just made it impossible for them to bury this. Good, she said, because if we keep burying things in this country, we'll eventually suffocate. They walked out together, past reporters, sprinting toward the scene, past curious onlookers with questions, past guards still stunned. At the exit, a little boy standing with his mother looked up at Nathan. Mister, are you the soldier guy from the video? Nathan nodded. The boy hesitated, then held up a tiny trembling hand in salute. Nathan returned it silently, solemnly. And Alexandra, she looked at the boy and did the same, a silent salute. Two hands raised, two people standing, two stories now forever intertwined. The video hadn't just gone viral, it had detonated. By Tuesday morning, it was no longer just on social media. It was on Good Morning America, CNN, Fox News, and even the international press. 3 security contractors fired a decorated corporate executive detained by private security and a single dad veteran who stepped in without raising his voice. But what the public didn't know, not yet, was that the moment about to tilt the balance didn't come from a journalist or a badge or a lawyer. It came from a teenage boy in a hoodie with cracked sneakers and a secondhand phone. His name was Luis Ortega, 17, high school senior. Worked weekends in the mall's food court washing trays. Didn't speak much, but he had been there. He'd seen it all from the moment Alexandra Carter was accused to the exact second Nathan Reed stepped between her and injustice. And he'd filmed it. Not just 30 seconds, the whole thing raw, uncut, including audio of the security men denying her request to show a receipt, including her calm voice, including the moment she said, Alexandra Carter, VP of Internal Investigations. And the world stopped breathing. But Luis hadn't posted it right away. He waited. He watched the internet explode with edits, memes, opinions, speculation. And then while sitting alone in his tiny room on a secondhand laptop, he opened TikTok and posted the full clip with just 4 words. This is what happened. By sunrise, it had 12 million views. Later that morning, Alexandra stood in a narrow conference room at Carter Industries headquarters, hands clenched behind her back, watching the footage play on a wall-mounted screen. No edits, no commentary, just truth. Gerald Whitman stood beside her, arms crossed, silent. When the video ended, he said, "So that's how it went down." Alexandra gave a single nod. "Yes, sir." Whitman turned toward the glass. Outside, a growing cluster of reporters waited. He exhaled. "You handled it better than most." "I didn't handle it," she said. "He did." Whitman raised a brow. "The Marine." "Yes, Nathan Reed. He didn't know who I was, didn't care. He stepped in because he saw something wrong." Whitman was quiet for a moment. "Then you think he'd speak on record?" Alexandra turned to face him. He didn't step in for credit. He stepped in so a little girl wouldn't grow up thinking silence was safer than justice. The chief nodded slowly. "That boy who posted the clip, Ortega, we're vetting him now." "He's the real hero of this part," Alexandra said. "He had the courage to share the uncut version." Whitman looked at her carefully. "And what do you want to do now?" She didn't hesitate. "I want to go back to that mall." That afternoon, a press conference was hastily arranged in the same food court where it all began. Dozens of journalists lined the ropes. Shoppers stopped mid-latte. Security guarded every corner. Mall music muted to a hush. Luis Ortega stood off to the side, hunched nervous, holding a phone in one hand and wiping his palms on his jeans. Nathan and Lily arrived just before it began. They kept their distance, not because they were afraid, but because sometimes the best way to stand for something is to stand back and let others rise. Alexandra stepped to the mic. Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. "I am Alexandra Carter of Carter Industries. Last Saturday, I was wrongfully detained in this mall. 3 security contractors violated procedure, and one bystander, not an officer, not a lawyer, not a politician, stood up." She paused, letting the moment breathe. "I didn't know him. He didn't know me, but he knew something was wrong. He didn't raise his fists. He raised a question." A ripple moved through the crowd. "That man is Nathan Reed," she continued. "A Marine veteran, a single father, and a voice of calm when others lost theirs. He reminded this country what justice looks like, Not in a courtroom, but in a mall. She gestured toward the side of the stage. And this, she added, is Luis Ortega. He filmed everything. He didn't edit, narrate, or perform. He let the truth speak for itself. A hesitant wave from Luis, a flash of applause, then more. Alexandra looked directly into the cameras. Now I ask every viewer, every security officer, every citizen, don't ask where the good men are. Look, you'll find them in coffee shops, on porches, holding their children's hands, not shouting, but standing still, waiting for the moment they're needed. Silence, then thunder. The applause rolled in waves, reporters, bystanders, even mall employees clapping with a kind of relief, as if the world had tilted slightly back toward the light. Nathan said nothing, but Lily tugged his sleeve. Daddy? Yes. Are you going to clap too? He smiled gently. No, sweetie. Why not? He looked at Alexandra standing there, composed, powerful human, and at Luis holding his phone with shaky hands and two big dreams. Because sometimes, Nathan said softly, the best thing a person can do is let someone else have the moment. That night, as the news aired the full press conference, a final edit of the viral video played, but this time it included new footage. Alexandra's speech, Luis's name, and at the very end a still shot of Nathan and Lily walking away hand in hand. No words, no music, just the sound of applause fading behind them. The caption read, "Sometimes heroes don't speak. They ask one question and change everything." The clip of Alexandra's press conference looped endlessly on the news cycle, but it wasn't the soundbite that got people talking. It was a name, Nathan Reed. The world now had a face, a name, a silhouette to associate with quiet heroism. And as that name echoed across dinner tables, smartphones, and corporate boardrooms, it stirred something deeper in places long untouched. In a security room deep within North Shore Mall, an older man sat watching the footage again. His name was Arthur Keene, 72, head of mall security for over 20 years. Before that, retired MP Army, 1970s. He'd seen things forgotten more than most ever knew. But when the footage showed Nathan stepping between three security contractors with nothing but words and presence, Arthur squinted. Not at his posture, not at his face, at his silence. He doesn't posture, Arthur muttered. What was that? Asked the younger guard beside him. Arthur leaned in, rewound the footage again. He doesn't flare up, doesn't clench his fists, doesn't even blink when they reach for what's in their jackets. That's not training. That's instinct. The kind they only beat into you at the top levels. He paused, then leaned back in his chair. You don't forget that kind of stillness. Later that evening, Arthur made a call. His fingers dialed a number he hadn't touched in years. A friend in the VA office in Milwaukee. Pull me a record, Arthur said. Name's Nathan Reed. Prior service. Probably Marine Corps. Might be sealed. There was a long pause on the other end. Then a voice said, Arthur, you don't tug on sealed files unless you want someone tugging back. I'm not digging, Arthur replied. I'm remembering. Another pause. Then you're not wrong. Meanwhile, Nathan sat on the back porch of his home, sipping coffee that had long since gone cold. Lily had gone to sleep early, exhausted from school and the sudden attention. But the house was still filled with her laughter, her drawings, her little pink socks tucked beneath couch cushions. He liked the quiet, but tonight the quiet pressed back. A rustle behind him. He turned. Alexandra stood by the fence line holding a manila folder and two coffees. You always bring paperwork to a porch visit, he asked with a small smile. Only when it's about ghosts, she replied, handing him a cup. He took it. I've got enough of those. I know, she said, sitting beside him. One of them's in this folder. Nathan didn't open it. He didn't need to. You've been digging, he asked softly. Alexandra shook her head. Wasn't me. Someone from internal investigations recognized your name. They'd heard rumors about a Marine legal advisor who walked away after a scandal in 17. Nathan exhaled slowly. I didn't walk. I was pushed. Quietly, cleanly. That's how they protect the machine. Alexandra opened the folder and read from the top. Major Nathan Reed, lead legal strategist in the Patterson-Whitman corruption case, 2017, declined all press, no official statements, resigned honorably 6 weeks later. She looked at him. You dismantled a multi-million-dollar procurement fraud inside the Pentagon and disappeared. Nathan didn't move. I didn't do it for glory. I did it because Innocent men were dying in vehicles with faulty armor, while executives bought second homes in Virginia. And they tried to bury you. They tried to promote me, quietly, said I had a future to serve in controlled legal consultancy. That's code for we'll keep you in the building as long as you stop asking uncomfortable questions. Alexandra's voice was barely a whisper now. And you said no. I said no, and I walked. They sat in silence until Alexandra asked the question she'd been holding back. Why didn't you tell anyone who you were? He looked at her, the edges of his eyes tired but clear. Because it's not about who I was. It's about who I choose to be now. She nodded slowly. That explains why you didn't flinch. Why your words hit like courtroom testimony. You've stood in fire before. I've lost men because others stayed silent, he said. That won't happen again. Not if I can help it. Alexandra closed the folder, setting it aside. You could have been a colonel by now, a DC power player. But you're here raising a little girl in a rental house, drinking coffee on a wooden porch. Nathan looked toward the window where Lily's nightlight glowed faintly. Because this matters more. She followed his gaze. You know you're becoming a symbol. There are think pieces being written about the return of quiet masculinity, about how veterans lead better than politicians. Nathan chuckled. If I had a nickel for every time someone wanted to make me a symbol, I could pay off this house. But you won't do interviews. Why bothering? Because symbols fade, but example that lasts. In a child's memory, in a neighbor's courage, in someone's next hard choice. Alexandra smiled small and real. I wish more men thought like that. Nathan took a sip of the now warm coffee she brought him. I wish more people did. She hesitated, then asked, Can I keep the folder? Nathan looked at her with quiet gratitude. Only if you promise not to use it to define me. I won't, she said, but one day the world might need to remember. As the stars came out overhead, they sat in stillness, two quiet warriors from different fronts. And inside, a child slept safe because a man once refused to stay silent in a courtroom no one remembers. The morning after the folder was sealed back in Alexandra's hands, Nathan found himself standing in the small park near their home, the one with the wooden swings and benches that creaked with every breath of wind. Lily played quietly with sidewalk chalk on the pavement near the fountain, drawing hearts and stars, and something that vaguely resembled a corporate badge with wings. Nathan watched her from a distance, his hands in his coat pockets, shoulders slightly hunched. Not from the cold, from the weight. Behind him, footsteps approached familiar, even in their hesitation. Alexandra. She didn't say anything at first, just stood beside him, also watching Lily in silence. Then softly, You didn't sleep last night, did you? Nathan didn't answer immediately. When he finally did, his voice was low, steady. No, but I've lived through worse nights. A long pause. Alexandra exhaled. You know, I've worked internal investigations for almost a decade, investigated more corporate misconduct than I can count, seen the best and the absolute worst. She turned toward him now. But I've never had someone like you step into one of my cases uninvited. Especially not in public, especially not without a badge. Nathan met her eyes, calm. I didn't stand up for a badge. I know. I didn't even stand up because you're an executive, he added. I stood up because you're a person, and what they were doing wasn't right. Alexandra looked away for a moment. Her voice cracked at the edges, not from weakness, but from too many years of holding it together. You know what the hardest part of being in this job is? She asked. Nathan waited. It's not the threats or the politics or the pressure. It's the quiet moments after you write up a report knowing it'll never go anywhere. That someone upstairs will bury it, that the good guys will lose again. She blinked hard but didn't let the tears fall. Nathan's voice was soft. So why do you stay? Because someone has to still believe it matters, she said, even if the system doesn't change overnight, even if no one notices. I have to believe every good fight leaves a mark. He nodded. I know that fight. I lived it for years. Boardrooms, classified hearings, watching men walk free who deserve prison, and seeing soldiers punished for doing what they thought was right. And that's why you left, she asked. I left, Nathan said slowly, because I couldn't look my daughter in the eye and tell her to stand up for what's right while I stayed silent for a paycheck. Alexandra looked at Lily, who was now drawing a large sun with wide rays stretching across the sidewalk. She watches you, Alexandra whispered. She's the reason I stand still when it matters, Nathan said. Then he turned to Alexandra. And you, oh, she swallowed. I stayed because I wanted to be the kind of executive I never had when I was younger. I joined the company thinking I'd change the world. Then I learned I'd be lucky to change the one policy, one room, one conversation. Nathan studied her carefully. You changed more than that. She scoffed just slightly. I became a headline. No, he said. You became a mirror for people who forgot what integrity looks like in corporate America. She looked down, letting his words settle. Then she asked the question she'd held for too long. Why didn't you let them take me? Nathan raised an eyebrow. You really want the honest answer? She nodded. He took a deep breath. Because if they had dragged you out of there in front of your own company, in front of your city, that wouldn't have just broken procedure. That would have broken something inside you. Alexander said nothing, so he continued, and I've seen that happen to good people. Just once, that moment where they lose faith not in the system, but in themselves, in their choice to believe the system could be better. He looked her straight in the eye. And I wasn't going to let that happen. Not to you. Alexandra stepped back, visibly shaken. You don't know me, she whispered. Don't have to, he replied. She looked at him, searching for something to hold on to. Maybe hope, maybe truth, maybe the belief that someone out there still fought without an agenda. And in his silence, she found it. Nathan glanced toward Lily. She wants to be an artist, thinks the world should have more color. Alexandra smiled, eyes glassy. She's right. They stood in silence a little longer. Then as Alexandra turned to leave, she paused. I'm going to testify against the private security firm, she said. Nathan nodded. Good. And I'm going to name names in the chain of command that let it slide. He looked at her with admiration, soft but clear. That'll make enemies. I already have them, she said. Might as well earn them honestly. She walked a few steps, then stopped. Nathan. Yeah, she turned back. You stood up for me in front of the world. But I want you to know something. What's that? She took a breath. You didn't just stape an injustice. You reminded me who I am. Then she smiled, soft, genuine, like something broken inside her had just snapped back into place. And for the first time in a long time, Nathan Reed smiled too. Not the polite kind, not the tired one, but the quiet kind that says maybe the world really can heal. The call came at 3:17 a.m. Nathan grabbed his phone and the dark eyes still weighted with sleep. Unknown number. Military instinct kicked in. Late-night calls never brought good news. Reed, his voice already shaking off sleep's cobwebs. They're digging, all the way down to the bone. A man's voice familiar from years past. Mason Townsend, former Pentagon legal counsel, one of the few who'd stood by Nathan during the investigation. Nathan sat up straight, fully awake now. What are they looking for? Not what, who. Victor Reynolds, former VP at Whitman Defense Systems, current executive vice president at Carter Industries. The man you helped put in a corner 5 years ago. A cold weight settled in Nathan's chest. Alexandra Carter works for Carter Industries. And now Victor Reynolds is digging into your past with clearances he shouldn't have. Someone's feeding him information. What does he want? Mason's voice dropped lower. Revenge is my guess, but that's not all. There's a trail connecting Patterson-Whitman to Carter Industries. A lot of the same players, same patterns. I think your Miss Carter might be stepping into something bigger than a mall security incident. Nathan stared into the darkness of his bedroom. She doesn't know. She will soon. Reynolds is scheduled to meet with Gerald Whitman tomorrow. Word is he's bringing a file on you and her. I need to warn her. Be careful, Nathan. Last time you went up against these people, you only lost your career. This time, thanks for the call, Mason. Nathan hung up his mind, racing through implications. The quiet life he'd built for Lily, the stability, the peace, all now balancing on a knife edge. And Alexandra walking straight into a trap without knowing who had laid it. He glanced at the clock. Too early to call, too urgent to wait. At 7:15 a.m., Alexandra Carter sat in her office reviewing security camera footage from various Carter Industries retail partners when her assistant buzzed through. Ms. Carter, there's a Nathan Reed here to see you. He doesn't have an appointment, but says it's urgent. Alexandra checked her watch. Send him in. Nathan entered, jaw-set eyes scanning the room out of habit, exits Windows cameras. It was a posture she recognized, a soldier evaluating terrain. "I think you're in danger," he said without preamble. Alexandra's eyebrows rose. "Good morning to you too. Victor Reynolds, Executive VP of Operations. You know him?" She nodded slowly. "Of course, he's been with the company longer than I have. Reports directly to Gerald Whitman." A pause as she studied Nathan's face. "Why, he was at Whitman Defense Systems during the Patterson scandal. He was never charged, but he was neck deep in the fraud. I have reason to believe he's targeting you because of me." Alexandra leaned forward. "Explain." 5 years ago, I led an investigation into defense contract fraud. Soldiers were dying because of faulty equipment that passed inspection. The paper trail led to Victor Reynolds, but he had protection from higher up. The case was buried, but not before he lost his VP position at Whitman Defense. "And now he's here," Alexandra whispered. "And now he's here, second in command at Carter Industries with an axe to grind and a record to protect." Alexandra's fingers drummed against her desk, mind racing. The security incident at the mall, the 3 men from Blackwater Security. They weren't random. Someone sent them. "Reynolds," she breathed. "But why target me specifically?" Nathan met her gaze. "What have you been investigating before the mall incident?" Alexandra hesitated, then reached for her tablet. A few swipes later, she turned it toward him. "Contract irregularities, missing inventory, security protocols overridden at 3 facilities. I flagged them for Mr. Whitman last month." Nathan scanned the documents, the color draining from his face. "These serial numbers, cross-reference them with Pentagon acquisition records from 2017. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up database access she shouldn't have had. The screen populated with matching entries. "They're the same components," she whispered. "The exact same faulty parts from the Patterson case now being cycled through Carter Industries subsidiaries." "He's running the same play," Nathan said. "Different team, same playbook." Alexandra stood up, pacing now. "I need to take this to Whitman immediately." "No," Nathan's voice cut through the room. "Whitman is meeting with Reynolds today. For all we know, he's involved. Gerald Whitman has been like a father to me." Alexandra's voice hardened. "He personally recruited me from business school. He championed me through 3 promotions. And Patterson was like a father to half the Pentagon. Trust has to be earned in real time, Alexandra, not accumulated like credit." She stopped pacing, staring at him. "What are you suggesting?" "We need more evidence. Hard proof Reynolds is recycling the faulty components and that he targeted you to stop your investigation." "And how do we get that?" Nathan's mouth set in a grim line. "We go hunting." By noon, they had established a makeshift operations center in Alexandra's apartment. Lily was safely at school, and Nathan had called in sick to his job at the legal aid clinic. Their timeline was tight. Reynolds and Whitman were meeting at 4 p.m. Alexandra spread documents across her dining table, cross-referencing shipping manifests against inventory lists. "These components shouldn't exist anymore. They were ordered destroyed after the Patterson investigation." Nathan nodded, scrolling through classified files on a secure laptop. "Yet somehow they've been laundered back into the supply chain through Carter Industries. The question is, who signed off on accepting them?" "I need access to the executive authorization logs," Alexandra said. "But they're locked behind Whitman's personal firewall." "Can you get it remotely?" She shook her head. "Only from his executive terminal and only with his biometrics." Nathan rubbed his jaw, thinking, what about physical records? Hard copies? Everything's digital now. She trailed off, eyes widening. Except for the annual compliance audits, Reynolds insisted on maintaining paper backups after the ransomware attack last year. Where are they kept? Executive storage basement level of headquarters. But security is tight. Key card pin and facial recognition. Nathan smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Good thing you're the head of internal investigations. At 2:30 p.m., Alexandra swiped her badge at the executive entrance of Carter Industries. Nathan walked beside her wearing a visitor's badge and carrying a leather portfolio. Just follow my lead, she murmured as they passed security. You're a legal consultant helping with the mall incident documentation. The guard nodded them through without question. Alexandra's badge opened doors most employees never knew existed, whisking them through silent corridors of power. Reynolds' office is on 28, she said as they entered a private elevator. Whitman's on 30. The records room is sub-level 2. Nathan checked his watch. How long before the meeting? 90 minutes. Reynolds always prepares in his office for at least an hour before meeting Whitman. The elevator hummed downward. Alexandra's fingers tapped nervously against her thigh. What if we're wrong, she whispered. What if Whitman isn't involved? Nathan met her gaze. Then we'll have evidence to clear him. But we need to know who we can trust. The records room required Alexandra's badge, a 6-digit PIN, and a retina scan. The heavy door clicked open to reveal rows of fireproof filing cabinets meticulously labeled and organized. Compliance audits will be in Section E, she said, moving confidently through the rows, 2021 through 2023. They found the files quickly, 3 thick binders filled with shipping manifests, inspection certificates, and authorization signatures. Alexandra flipped through pages searching for specific component numbers. Here, she pointed, voice tight, batch 45872X. These were declared destroyed after failing stress tests, but they've been reissued with new serial numbers. Nathan leaned over her shoulder. Who authorized the acceptance? Her finger traced down to the signature line. Gerald Whitman. The color drained from her face. But that's not his signature. I know his handwriting. Nathan pulled out his phone, taking photos of the documents. We need to find who forged it. The authorization logs would show who actually processed these, Alexandra said, flipping through more pages. A soft click from the doorway froze them both. Someone was coming. Nathan moved swiftly, guiding Alexandra between 2 tall cabinets just as the door swung open. Through a narrow gap, they watched a security guard enter, scanning the room. He spoke into his radio. Records room clear, continuing sweep. The guard left the door, automatically locking behind him. Alexandra exhaled. That was the 2:45 security check. They weren't looking for us specifically. Yet, Nathan added, we need to hurry. They worked quickly, photographing documents, cross-referencing serial numbers. Alexandra suddenly stopped, holding up a page. Nathan, look at this. Electronic verification logs. Reynolds used Whitman's access code on 3 separate occasions when Whitman was out of the country. That's our connection, Nathan said. Reynolds is forging Whitman's approvals. Alexandra gathered the evidence, careful to leave the files exactly as they had found them. We need to get to Whitman before Reynolds does. They exited the records room, Alexandra's confident stride masking her internal turmoil. Her mentor, her champion, potentially being framed, or worse, complicit. The elevator carried them upward past floors of employees who had no idea of the storm brewing above them. At the executive floor, Alexandra led Nathan down a plush corridor toward Whitman's office. They were 20 feet from his door when another door opened. Victor Reynolds stepped out, briefcase in hand. He froze when he saw Alexandra. Then his eyes shifted to Nathan, and recognition dawned cold and hard. Major Reed, he said, voice like ice over gravel. I thought we buried you years ago. Nathan didn't flinch. Some things don't stay buried, Mr. Reynolds. Reynolds glanced between them, calculation replacing surprise. I see internal investigations has expanded its scope. Interesting choice of consultant, Ms. Carter. Alexandra stepped forward. We need to speak with Mr. Whitman immediately. I'm afraid Gerald is unavailable. Reynolds smiled thinly. Board emergency, but I'd be happy to relay your concerns. We'll wait, Nathan said. Reynolds checked his watch. That could be hours. Perhaps we should discuss whatever's troubling you in my office. Instead, I'm sure we can clear up any misunderstandings. The trap was obvious, but refusing would only escalate suspicion. Alexandra nodded, professional mask firmly in place. 10 minutes, then we need to connect with Mr. Whitman. Reynolds' office was a monument to corporate achievement awards photographs, with politicians, military memorabilia displayed like trophies. He gestured for them to sit. Now, what seems to be the problem? Reynolds settled behind his massive desk, fingers steepled. Alexandra remained standing. We've been reviewing the mall security incident. Ah, yes, unfortunate business. Those contractors have been terminated as you requested. It's not about the contractors, Nathan said. It's about who sent them. Reynolds' smile never wavered. I'm not sure I follow. Components from the Patterson-Whitman case, Alexandra said flatly. Serial numbers that shouldn't exist. Whitman's forged signatures. Security contractors targeting me specifically after I flagged inventory irregularities. The temperature in the room seemed to drop. Reynolds leaned back, studying them both. That's quite a conspiracy theory, Ms. Carter. I expected better from Gerald's protege. We have documentation, Nathan said. Do you? Reynolds' hand moved casually toward his desk drawer. Actual evidence? Or just speculation from a disgraced military lawyer and an ambitious executive who's clearly out of her depth? Alexander stepped closer to his desk. We're taking our findings directly to Gerald Whitman. Gerald trusts my judgment implicitly, Reynolds said, voice hardening. Who do you think he'll believe? His right-hand man of 15 years or the woman who's been causing PR nightmares by playing detective at shopping malls? The intercom on Reynolds' desk buzzed. Mr. Reynolds, your car is ready for the off-site meeting with Mr. Whitman. Thank you, Janet, he responded, never taking his eyes off Alexandra and Nathan. I'm afraid our time is up. I have a meeting to attend. Nathan moved between Reynolds and the door. We can't let you take those fabricated files to Whitman. Reynolds chuckled. You don't have a badge anymore, Major. You're just a visitor with a temporary pass. One call to security and you'll be escorted from the building. Make the call, Nathan said calmly. I'm sure they'd be interested in the documents we found in the records room. Reynolds' facade cracked just slightly. What documents? Alexandra pulled out her phone, bringing up the photos. Verification logs showing you accessed the system using Whitman's credentials while he was in Tokyo. Shipment authorizations for components that were supposed to be destroyed after the Patterson investigation. The same components that failed and killed 4 Marines. Reynolds' hand moved to his phone. You're making career-ending accusations, Ms. Carter. People died because of those parts. Nathan's voice was low, controlled fury, and you're still using them. Cost efficiency. Reynolds shrugged, mask slipping further. The failure rate was exaggerated. The military overreacted. Tell that to the families. Nathan stepped closer. Tell that to the children who lost fathers because profit margins were more important than safety protocols. Reynolds stood abruptly. You have no idea what it takes to keep a company like this competitive. Sometimes corners get cut. That's business. That's fraud, Alexandra countered. And now you've involved Carter Industries in it. Reynolds' laugh was cold. Involved Carter Industries has been the shell game all along. Why do you think Gerald hired me after Patterson? He needed someone who understood how to navigate these waters. Alexandra felt the floor tilt beneath her. You're saying Whitman knows. Knows he orchestrated the whole thing. Patterson took the fall last time. This time I suspect it will be you, Ms. Carter. Reynolds picked up his briefcase. Now, if you'll excuse me. Nathan didn't move from the door. We can't let you leave with those files. Reynolds' smile turned predatory. What files? You mean the evidence of Alexandra Carter's attempts to frame me using forged documents, the desperate ploy of a woman who created a public spectacle at a mall to boost her profile, the tragic case of an executive who enlisted a known whistleblower to create false allegations against her superiors. Alexandra felt cold certainty settle in her stomach. You've already prepared the counter-narrative. Since the moment you started looking into those inventory discrepancies, Reynolds confirmed, Gerald advised patience. I counseled preemptive action. After your little mall incident went viral, the board sided with me. So the security contractors at the mall, Nathan began, were supposed to quietly detain you, Ms. Carter. Take your phone escorts you to a private room where we could discuss your future with the company. Your viral defender here complicated matters considerably. Reynolds glanced at his watch. Now I'm late for a meeting where your professional reputation will be systematically dismantled. Unless, Alexandra crossed her arms. Unless what? Resign today. Cite personal reasons. Take a generous severance and disappear. The board will accept my recommendation to let this go quietly given your previous contributions to the company. And the faulty components, Nathan asked. Reynolds waved dismissively. Already being phased out. After your little investigation 5 years ago, we developed newer, better versions. This is just inventory clearance. People could still die, Alexandra said. Statistically unlikely, Reynolds countered, and fully covered by our liability insurance. It's just business, Ms. Carter. The silence in the room was deafening. Alexandra looked at Nathan, saw the same disgust and anger she felt mirrored in his eyes. No deal, she said finally. Reynolds sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. He pressed a button on his desk phone. Janet, please call security to escort Ms. Carter and her guests from the building, and inform HR that Ms. Carter is on administrative leave pending an investigation into document tampering. As they waited for security, Reynolds smiled thinly. You should have taken the deal, Alexandra. Now you'll lose everything, your reputation, your career, possibly even your freedom if the board decides to pursue charges. Security arrived within minutes, two large men in suits, earpieces firmly in place. Please escort Ms. Carter and her guest out, Reynolds instructed. Their building access is revoked effective immediately. As they were being led away, Alexandra turned back. This isn't over, Victor. Oh, it is, he replied confidently. You just don't know it yet. In the elevator surrounded by guards, Alexandra and Nathan exchanged glances. They'd stepped into something much bigger than a mall confrontation, much darker than corporate politics. They were now targets of a system designed to protect itself at all costs. Outside the building, standing on the sidewalk as their badges were confiscated, Alexandra finally spoke. He's going to destroy everything I've built. Nathan's hand found hers, a brief, steady pressure. Not if we move first. We have the evidence. We have the truth. Truth doesn't always win, she whispered. No, he agreed, but people who fight for it sometimes do. They walked away from Carter Industries' headquarters, two figures against the towering glass monument to power and profit. Behind them, Victor Reynolds watched from his window, already dialing a number. It's me. We have a problem. Reed and Carter. Yes, that Reed. They know about the components. No, they have evidence. He listened for a moment. Understood. Whatever it takes. Across town, Lily's elementary school received an unusual midday call. A woman claiming to be Nathan Reed's sister, explaining a family emergency. Lily needed to be released immediately to the family friend waiting outside, a man in a black SUV with Carter Industries security credentials. The school secretary frowned at the unexpected request. I'll need to confirm this with Mr. Reed directly. Of course, the woman replied smoothly. I believe you have his emergency contact information. The secretary dialed Nathan's number. It went straight to voicemail, his phone confiscated during the Carter Industries security escort. Following protocol, the secretary called the secondary emergency contact, Alexandra Carter. Her phone, too, had been taken. The secretary made a decision. I'm sorry, but without confirmation from a parent or verified guardian, I can't release the student. The call disconnected abruptly. Minutes later, the school's fire alarm blared. As children filed out to the designated areas, a security guard approached Lily's teacher. Mr. Reed sent me. There's been an incident. The teacher hesitated, protective instincts flaring. I need identification and authorization. The man produced a Carter Industries security badge. Mr. Reed is at the hospital with Miss Carter. There was an accident. Lily, hearing this, stepped forward. Is my daddy hurt? The guard knelt down. He's fine, sweetheart. But he asked me to bring you to him. He said to tell you it's like the mall, sometimes grown-ups need help too. The reference to their shared experience nearly worked. Lily reached for his hand, but her teacher pulled her back. We need proper authorization, she insisted. School policy. The guard's friendly demeanor hardened. Fine. We'll do this differently. He reached inside his jacket. The teacher pushed Lily behind her fingers, already dialing 911 on her cell phone. Before the guard could act, a voice cut through the chaos. I believe you're at the wrong school. Arthur Keene, the mall's head of security, stood 10 feet away, hands casually in his coat pockets. Behind him, two police officers approached, hands on their belts. The guard assessed the situation, turned, and walked quickly toward a waiting black SUV. Who was that man? Lily asked, voice small. Arthur knelt beside her. Someone who made a mistake. Your dad asked me to watch over you for a bit. Is that okay? Lily studied him with solemn eyes. Did you know my dad in the army? Arthur smiled gently. No, little one, but I know a good man when I see one. Nathan and Alexandra, unaware of the near abduction, were speeding across town in her car, desperately trying to reach Gerald Whitman before Reynolds could implement his plan. Try his private number again, Nathan urged. Alexandra redialed phone on speaker. This time someone answered. Alexandra, where are you? Gerald Whitman's voice, concerned but cautious. Not at the office. Gerald, we need to meet immediately. Somewhere private. It's about Victor Reynolds and the Patterson components. A long pause. How much do you know? Enough to understand why Reynolds targeted me. Enough to know those parts should have been destroyed years ago. Another pause, longer this time. The Riverside Boathouse. 30 minutes. Come alone. Alexandra glanced at Nathan. I have someone with me. Someone you should meet. Alexandra, Whitman's voice carried a warning. He's the Marine who exposed the original fraud. The one who saved me at the mall. You can trust him. Whitman sighed. 30 minutes. And Alexandra, be careful who you trust right now. The call ended. Alexandra turned to Nathan. What do you think? Nathan's expression was grim. Could be a trap. Could be legitimate. Either way, it's our best shot at getting ahead of Reynolds. And if Whitman is involved, then we'll have confirmation. And we take the evidence to someone who can actually do something with it. Alexandra nodded, pressing the accelerator. As they drove, Nathan tried calling Lily's school, frowning when he couldn't get through. Something wrong? Alexandra asked. Probably nothing, he said, but the soldier's instinct in him was screaming. Just want to check on Lily. Use my backup phone. Alexandra handed him a slim device from her glove compartment. Corporate can't track it. Nathan dialed, relief flooding through him when the school secretary answered. Mr. Reed, we've been trying to reach you. There was an incident. His blood ran cold. What incident? Someone tried to pick up Lily, claiming there was an emergency. When we wouldn't release her without authorization, they triggered the fire alarm. A security guard approached her class, but Mr. Keene from mall security intervened with police. Nathan gripped the phone tighter. Is she safe? Yes, she's with Mr. Keene now. The police are here as well. Tell them I'm on my way. Don't release her to anyone but me. He hung up, face ashen. They went after Lily, he said, voice hollow. Reynolds tried to take my daughter. Alexandra's knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. This stops now. She made a sharp U-turn, heading away from the boathouse. What are you doing? Nathan asked. Changing the battlefield, she replied, determination hardening her voice. Reynolds thinks he can outmaneuver us by attacking what we love. Let's show him what happens when you cross that line. They drove in tense silence, Nathan's mind racing between concern for his daughter and the escalating danger they faced. Alexandra finally pulled into an underground parking garage beneath a luxury apartment building. My brother's place, she explained. He's in Europe for 3 months. No one will look for us here. Inside the apartment, Alexandra moved with purpose, accessing a hidden safe behind an abstract painting. She withdrew a small hard drive. Insurance policies, she said. Every investigation I've ever conducted backed up independently from company servers, including files I started building on Reynolds the moment I noticed the inventory discrepancies. Nathan raised an eyebrow. You suspected him before. I didn't know what I suspected, she admitted. But in my position, you learn to document everything, particularly when powerful men start taking unusual interest in routine matters. She connected the drive to her laptop, extracting files with practiced efficiency. First, we secure Lily, she said, fingers flying across the keyboard. Then we end Reynolds. Nathan watched her work, seeing a different Alexandra emerge, not the corporate executive, not the woman from the mall, but something more primal, a fighter protecting what mattered. We can't go to the boathouse now, he said. It's too risky. Alexandra nodded without looking up. We're not going to Whitman. We're bringing Whitman to us, on our terms. She paused, looking up at Nathan with fierce determination. This isn't just about faulty parts anymore. They threatened your child. This is war. The adrenaline was still coursing through Nathan's veins as he burst through the school's double doors, Alexandra right behind him. His trained eyes scanned the lobby, identifying exits, potential threats, and finally the administrative office where his daughter waited. Time seemed to stretch and compress simultaneously each second, feeling like both an eternity and a heartbeat. Arthur Keene stood as they entered, his weathered hand resting protectively on Lily's small shoulder. The old security chief's posture relaxed slightly at the sight of Nathan, but the vigilance in his eyes never wavered, a recognition between men who had spent their lives watching for threats in the shadows. Daddy, Lily launched herself across the room. Nathan caught her, lifting her into an embrace that spoke volumes beyond words. He held her with the desperate relief of a man who had nearly lost everything, his fingers trembling slightly as they smoothed her hair. I've got you, pumpkin, he whispered, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. I've got you. Alexandra stood in the doorway, her corporate composure fractured by the raw emotion of the scene before her. This wasn't business anymore. This was personal. A line had been crossed that couldn't be uncrossed. Arthur approached, hands in his pockets, in a deliberate gesture of non-threat. Man who tried to take her was professional. Carter Industries, security credentials, but they were forgeries, good ones. He knew the protocols used your name. Nathan set Lily down but kept a firm grip on her hand. How did you know to be here? I didn't, Arthur replied, handing Nathan a small evidence bag containing a laminated ID card. But after your mall incident went viral, I flagged your name in our security system. When the school called about a man claiming authorization to pick up your daughter, I was already on patrol nearby. He nodded toward Lily. Smart kid you've got. She didn't go with him even when he used your private phrases. Nathan's jaw tightened as he examined the forged credentials. Blackwater Security Services, the same company that employs the mall security contractors. Alexandra moved closer, her voice low but vibrating with controlled fury. Reynolds moved faster than we anticipated. Too fast, Nathan agreed. This wasn't reactive. This was already planned. Arthur cleared his throat. You folks want to tell me what kind of hornet's nest you kicked, because whoever sent that man isn't going to stop with one attempt. Nathan and Alexandra exchanged glances, a silent calculation passing between them. Trust was a currency they couldn't afford to spend freely, but they were rapidly running out of options. Nathan gave a slight nod. Alexandra turned to Arthur. How much do you know about defense contracting? Enough to stay clear of it, Arthur replied, and enough to recognize when someone's being hunted by professionals. Nathan crouched to Lily's eye level, his face softening despite the danger surrounding them. Pumpkin, I need you to go with Miss Kelly for a few minutes while we talk with Mr. Keene. Can you do that for me? Lily studied her father's face with an intensity beyond her years reading the subtle signals most adults would miss. Are the bad men coming back? Nathan touched her cheek gently. Not if I can help it. After Lily was safely out of earshot with her teacher, the three adults gathered around a small conference table. Alexandra laid out the situation with clinical precision, the defective military components, Reynolds' fraud, the attempted cover-up, and now the escalation to kidnapping. Arthur listened without interruption, only the deepening creases around his eyes betraying his reaction. When she finished, he leaned back, fingers drumming thoughtfully against the table. So you've got evidence that could put a corporate executive in federal prison, and he knows you have it. Arthur's assessment was blunt. That man won't stop coming. Men like that don't lose. He will this time. Alexandra's voice hardened. Maybe, but first you need a safe house, Arthur said. Somewhere off-grid where you can regroup without looking over your shoulders every 5 minutes. Alexandra began, I have my brother's apartment. Arthur shook his head, cutting her off. First place they'll look once they track your vehicle. Reynolds has resources, private security, ex-military contractors, probably police contacts too. You need somewhere truly invisible. What do you suggest? Nathan asked. Arthur reached into his pocket and withdrew a single key attached to a worn leather fob. Cabin in Upper Michigan. Bought it for cash 20 years ago. Kept it off digital records. My hunting buddy is the county sheriff. He slid the key across the table. No internet, no cell service for miles, but it's secure. Alexandra glanced at Nathan, doubt flickering across her features. We can't just disappear. We need to take this evidence to the authorities. Not running, Nathan clarified, pocketing the key. Strategic retreat. We need time to organize what we have, plan our next move without Reynolds breathing down our necks. And your daughter needs to be safe, Arthur added, his tone brooking no argument. Nathan nodded, gratitude evident in his eyes. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Arthur replied grimly. Still got to get you there without being followed. Within the hour, they were heading north in Arthur's weathered pickup truck, Lily nestled between Nathan and Alexandra in the cab. Their phones remained at the school, batteries removed to prevent tracking. Alexandra's laptop and hard drive containing their evidence were secured in her bag at her feet. They drove in silence for the first 30 miles, tension gradually giving way to exhaustion as the city fell behind them. Rural Illinois stretched before them, fields of early autumn corn, creating a natural labyrinth that concealed their passage. Finally, Lily's small voice broke through the quiet. Daddy, why did that man want to take me? Nathan felt his chest constrict. No father should have to explain such darkness to a child. But he'd never lied to her, not about the important things. Some people think they can control others by threatening what they love, he said carefully, selecting words a 7-year-old might comprehend while preserving the essential truth. Like me, Lily asked. Like you. She considered this, her forehead creased in thought. But that doesn't work with you, right? Because you're not afraid. Alexandra glanced over, catching the shadow that passed across Nathan's face, the brief glimpse of vulnerability beneath the careful composure. I am afraid, Lily, his voice dropped to a whisper. That's why I fight. Fear doesn't make you weak. It shows you what matters. The cabin materialized as the sun began its descent, a sturdy structure of logs and stone nestled against a small lake's edge. Trees crowded close, creating natural boundaries between the property and the nearest neighbor, a half-mile distant. Arthur had called ahead to his friend, the local sheriff, who had stocked the pantry and checked the generator. Inside was simple but comfortable: 2 bedrooms, a main living area with stone fireplace, and a kitchen with propane appliances. Nathan carried their few hastily gathered belongings inside, while Alexandra helped Lily explore their temporary refuge. There's a boat, Lily announced, pointing through the back window toward a small dock where a rowboat was secured. For fishing, Alexandra explained, summoning a smile despite her exhaustion. Maybe your dad can teach us tomorrow. Night fell quickly in the northern woods, shadows deepening between the pines, until blackness swallowed everything beyond the cabin's windows. After a simple dinner and tucking Lily into bed, Nathan and Alexandra sat before the fireplace, the dancing flames illuminating scattered papers and open files. The hard drive's contents, projected onto Alexandra's laptop screen, revealed a complex web of financial transactions, shipping records, and safety waivers. She traced a pattern across the display: corporate training, making sense of the deliberate chaos. Reynolds has been systematically reintroducing the defective parts through multiple shell companies, she explained. Each batch rebranded with new serial numbers, documentation retroactively altered. Nathan studied the records, his legal background, recognizing the careful construction of plausible deniability. He's built a paper trail that insulates Whitman and implicates mid-level managers. Classic Fall Guy setup. What about these? Alexandra opened another file showing security requests. Blackwater was contracted specifically for the North Shore Mall on the exact day I was there, not their usual jurisdiction. Nathan's jaw tightened. They were waiting for you, though. The question is, how did they know you'd be there? Alexandra hesitated, realization dawning. My calendar. I've been documenting my investigation movements on my private calendar, but it syncs to the company server. So Reynolds has been monitoring your activities all along, Nathan concluded, pieces falling into place. The mall wasn't random. It was a setup, which means he knew I was looking into the components. Alexandra rubbed her temples. But why such a public confrontation? Why not just fire me quietly? Because it wasn't just about stopping your investigation, Nathan said slowly, the strategy becoming clear. It was about discrediting you, making you look unstable, unprofessional. If you'd been hauled out of that mall screaming about corporate fraud, who would have believed you afterward? Alexandra stared into the fire, understanding washing over her. I would have looked like a paranoid executive having a breakdown. Exactly, but then I showed up. And changed the narrative, she finished. Instead of becoming the disgraced executive, I became the wronged heroine, the victim of overzealous security. Nathan nodded grimly, which forced Reynolds to accelerate his timeline. Now he's desperate. Desperate men make mistakes. Like going after a child. Alexandra's voice hardened. That gives us leverage. It also makes him more dangerous, Nathan cautioned. We need to reach Whitman before Reynolds convinces him we're the enemy. Alexandra closed her laptop, darkness falling over her features. What if Whitman already knows? What if he's been part of this all along? Nathan considered this possibility, the implications rippling outward like stones dropped in still water. Then we go directly to the board with the evidence. Or the media, or the Pentagon. And if that doesn't work, her question hung in the air between them. Nathan's expression shifted subtly, a glimpse of the soldier he'd once been emerging from behind the civilian facade. There's always a way to fight. You just have to be willing to pay the price. Morning brought crystalline clarity to the northern landscape, sunlight fracturing across the lake's surface into countless diamonds. Lily woke early, excitement overcoming the previous day's trauma as she discovered the simple pleasures of cabin life. Alexandra found her on the dock, tossing pebbles into the water and counting the expanding ripples. I like it here, Lily declared as Alexandra sat beside her. It feels safe. Alexandra smiled, struck by how children could find peace in the midst of chaos. It is safe. Your dad made sure of that. Lily nodded sagely. He always does. She hesitated, then asked with unexpected directness, "Are you and Daddy in trouble?" Alexandra considered how to answer. This child deserved truth, but packaged appropriately for her age. "We discovered some people doing wrong things, and now they're angry with us. Like the men at the mall." "Yes, but bigger." Alexandra picked up a smooth stone, weighing it in her palm. Sometimes standing up for what's right makes powerful people uncomfortable. Lily watched her throw the stone, following its arc until it disappeared beneath the surface. "My mom used to say that too." Alexandra blinked in surprise. "She did before she got sick," Lily confirmed. "She was a doctor. Sometimes she had to tell people things they didn't want to hear." The simple comparison struck Alexandra with unexpected force. This child, barely 7, already understood the cost of integrity. Nathan appeared behind them, coffee mugs in hand. "Making friends with the fish?" he asked, handing Alexandra a steaming cup. "Lily was just teaching me about ripples," Alexandra replied, their eyes meeting over the child's head. By mid-morning, they'd established a secure connection to the outside world using a satellite phone Arthur had provided. Alexandra's first call was to a former law school classmate now working for the Securities and Exchange Commission. "Morgan, it's Alex Carter." She listened briefly, then continued. "I need a confidential channel to discuss corporate fraud at Carter Industries." "Yes, that Carter Industries, my employer." While Alexandra made calls, Nathan took Lily fishing from the small rowboat, maintaining a watchful eye on the shoreline while creating a semblance of normalcy for his daughter. From the cabin porch, Alexandra watched them, father and daughter, their silhouettes against sparkling water, forming a tableau of what truly mattered in this fight. Her satellite phone vibrated with an incoming message. Gerald Whitman had finally responded to her secure channel request. "What have you done? Alexandra Reynolds is telling the board you've gone rogue, stealing company documents, making wild accusations." She typed quickly. "Not wild, documented. The Patterson components are being recycled through Carter's subsidiaries. Reynolds forged your approvals." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. "Finally, prove it." Alexandra attached files, shipping manifests, authorization logs, electronic access records, showing Reynolds using Whitman's credentials during his Tokyo trip. "Why would he do this?" Whitman's response came minutes later. "Money. The components were already paid for. Reintroducing them instead of destroying them creates pure profit. And when they fail, the liability is diffused through shell companies." Another pause. "I need to see you in person." Alexandra glanced toward the lake where Nathan and Lily were rowing back toward the dock. "Not possible right now. Reynolds sent men after Reed's daughter." "What? That's absurd. Victor would never—" "He did. We have the security footage. Blackwater contractors at an elementary school." The silence stretched longer this time. When Whitman's response came, it carried the weight of a man reassessing everything he thought he knew. "What do you need from me?" "Access to the board, unfiltered, and protection for Nathan Reed and his daughter." "The Marine from the mall incident. How is he involved?" Alexandra explained in Nathan's history with the Patterson case, his expertise in military procurement fraud, his crucial role in uncovering Reynolds' scheme. Whitman's final message was terse. 24 hours. Keep your evidence secure. Trust no one until I contact you again." When Nathan returned with Lily, Alexandra shared Whitman's response. Nathan's expression remained skeptical as he toweled Lily's hair dry after their boating expedition. "Could be buying time for Reynolds," he noted. "Or he genuinely didn't know," Alexandra countered. "Gerald's a businessman, not a criminal. Reynolds could have kept him deliberately insulated." Nathan sent Lily inside to change into dry clothes, then turned to Alexandra, his voice dropping to ensure privacy. "Either way, we need a contingency plan. If Whitman doesn't come through, or worse, if he's working with Reynolds." "I've got 4 different agencies waiting for my evidence," Alexandra assured him. "SEC, FBI, Pentagon, Inspector General, and my contact at the Washington Post." Nathan nodded, impressed by her thoroughness. "Good, but Reynolds still has resources. And now he's cornered." "What are you thinking?" Nathan gazed toward the tree line, assessing their vulnerable position with a soldier's eye. "I'm thinking we should be prepared for visitors." That night, after Lily was asleep, they fortified the cabin as best they could. Nathan's military training guided their preparations, escape routes, planned improvised alarms, set at property boundaries, the boat readied for quick departure if necessary. Alexandra watched him work, struck by the calm efficiency with which he moved, the same quality that had first drawn her attention in the mall. "You've done this before," she observed as he finished securing the perimeter. "Not exactly this," he admitted, joining her on the porch, "but similar enough." They maintained watches through the night, taking turns sleeping. Dawn arrived without incident, but the sense of borrowed time hung over them. The waiting game continued. By noon, Alexander was pacing the small living room, repeatedly checking the satellite phone for messages from Whitman. Nothing. Lily picked up on the tension growing quieter, staying closer to her father. "Something's wrong," Alexandra finally said. "Gerald should have contacted us by now." Nathan nodded. "We need to consider the possibility that Reynolds got to him first." The satellite phone suddenly buzzed an unknown number. Alexandra answered cautiously. "Hello. Ms. Carter, this is Special Agent Diane Rodriguez, FBI. We received your files and preliminary statement. I need to verify your location for an immediate protective detail." Alexandra's eyes met Nathan's warning signals flashing between them. They had arranged no such protection, made no such statement. "I'm afraid there's been some confusion." Alexandra kept her voice steady. "I haven't sent any statement to the FBI. Ms. Carter, we have documentation with your electronic signature delivered this morning requesting federal protection from corporate threats." "That's not possible." Alexandra felt ice forming in her stomach. "My signature was forged." "Ma'am, we have reason to believe you're in danger. If you could just confirm your location." Nathan shook his head sharply. Alexandra ended the call. "Reynolds," she whispered. "He's trying to find us." Nathan was already moving, gathering their essential belongings. "We need to leave, now." They packed quickly, focused on the evidence and necessities. Lily, sensing the urgency, followed instructions without question, clutching her stuffed bear tightly. They were heading toward the door when the sound of vehicles approaching filtered through the trees. Nathan peered through the window, counting 2 black SUVs moving slowly down the access road. "Back door," he directed, guiding Lily and Alexandra toward the rear of the cabin. They slipped out, moving quickly toward the dock where the rowboat waited. The woods offered cover, but also limited visibility. They couldn't see the approaching threat, which meant the threat couldn't see them either. For now. Halfway to the dock, Nathan froze, pulling Alexandra and Lily behind a large pine. A third vehicle had approached from the opposite direction, cutting off their escape to the water. Men in tactical gear were already deploying, moving with professional precision through the woods. "They've surrounded us," Alexandra whispered, clutching Lily's hand. Nathan scanned their options, mind-calculating paths and probabilities with military precision. "There." He pointed to a narrow deer trail leading deeper into the forest. "If we can reach the hunting blind Arthur mentioned, and we'll have high ground and visibility." They moved as quietly as possible, Nathan leading Alexandra, keeping Lily between them. The girl's eyes were wide but determined, her steps carefully mimicking her father's deliberate movements. They'd covered perhaps 100 yards when shouts behind them indicated their absence from the cabin had been discovered. "They've found the back exit," Nathan's voice held controlled urgency. "We need to move faster." The forest blurred around them as they increased their pace, the path narrowing, undergrowth catching at their clothing. Lily stumbled once, Alexandra catching her before she fell. Behind them, crashing sounds indicated their pursuers had abandoned stealth for speed. They emerged suddenly at the edge of a small clearing. Across it stood a weathered hunting blind, elevated on stilts and nearly invisible against the autumn foliage. "There," Nathan directed, "high ground." And they raced across the open space, vulnerable for crucial seconds. Nathan lifted Lily up first, then helped Alexandra climb the rough wooden ladder. He followed last, pulling the ladder up behind them. Inside, the blind was cramped but offered 360-degree visibility through narrow windows. Nathan positioned himself at the rear window, watching their back trail. Alexandra crouched with Lily, quieting the child's rapid breathing with gentle reassurance. 5 men, Nathan reported in a hushed tone. "Professional equipment. They're spreading out to flank the blind." Alexandra removed the hard drive from her bag. "We need to protect the evidence." "You are the evidence," Nathan replied, eyes never leaving the forest edge. "Your testimony, your knowledge. The files just corroborate what you already know." A voice called from below. "Miss Carter, Mr. Reed, we're federal agents. We're here to help you." Nathan and Alexandra exchanged glances, skepticism mirrored in both expressions. The voice continued. We know Reynolds sent men after your daughter. We're here to provide protection. If they were legitimate, Nathan whispered, they'd establish a perimeter and announce themselves properly. These are Reynolds' men. Lily looked between them, fear finally breaking through her composed exterior. Daddy, I'm scared. Nathan knelt beside his daughter, cradling her face in his hands. Remember what I told you about fear. It shows you what matters. Right now, what matters is staying quiet and trusting me. Can you do that? She nodded solemnly. Nathan turned to Alexandra. They want the evidence. If they get that, they might leave us alone. You can't be serious, Alexandra hissed, clutching the hard drive tighter. This is our only leverage. Lily's safety is my priority. Nathan's eyes hardened. I've seen what men like this will do. The satellite phone in Alexandra's pocket suddenly vibrated. A text message from Gerald Whitman. State police en route. 10 minutes. Reynolds detained at headquarters. Hold position. Nathan, she thrust the phone toward him. It's Whitman. Nathan read the message, doubt warring with hope on his features. Could be a trap. Or our only chance, Alexandra countered. We just need to buy time. The blind shuddered as someone began climbing the support posts. Nathan moved to the hatch, his body tensing for confrontation. A voice called up, familiar, unexpected. Mr. Reed, Nathan Reed, it's Arthur Keene. Relief and suspicion battled across Nathan's features. Arthur. Don't open that hatch, Arthur warned. There are 5 mercenaries in these woods. I've been tracking them since they reached the county line. How did you find us? Nathan demanded, still cautious. GPS tracker in my truck, Arthur replied, his voice steady. Standard procedure for all my vehicles. State police are 8 minutes out. Whitman called me directly after Reynolds tried to access the corporate jet without authorization. Nathan glanced at Alexandra, who nodded slowly. He opened the hatch just enough to verify Arthur's identity before helping him inside. Arthur was breathing heavily, a hunting rifle clutched in weathered hands. They're Blackwater, all right. Same crew that tried to take Lily. Reynolds must have called in every favor he had. How did they find us? Alexandra asked. Old-fashioned detective work, I'd guess. My name, my property records. I wasn't as careful as I thought. Arthur positioned himself at a window, scanning the tree line. They're regrouping at the clearing edge, planning their approach. Nathan took the rifle Arthur offered, checking it with practiced hands. Options? Wait for state police, Arthur suggested, or make a stand. With 1 rifle against 5 armed men, Alexandra protested instinctively, pulling Lily closer. Sometimes the threat of resistance is enough, Nathan replied, his military training asserting itself. They want the evidence, not a firefight. A new voice called from below. Confident, commanding, and congruously refined amid the wilderness backdrop. Nathan Reed, this is Victor Reynolds. Let's discuss this situation like reasonable men. Nathan moved to the window. Reynolds stood at the edge of the clearing, flanked by 2 armed men. His corporate attire looked absurdly out of place in the wilderness, but his posture conveyed absolute authority. Nothing reasonable about sending armed men after my daughter, Nathan called back, his voice carrying across the clearing. Reynolds spread his hands in a gesture of conciliation that didn't reach his eyes. A misunderstanding. Overzealous security contractors exceeding their instructions. I simply wanted to ensure her safety while we resolved our differences. By kidnapping her from school, Alexandra joined Nathan at the window, anger burning through caution. So Carter. Reynolds' tone shifted to something harder. Corporate espionage is a serious federal offense. Stealing proprietary documents, making false accusations against executives, these carry significant penalties. However, I'm authorized to offer you both amnesty in exchange for the return of all Carter Industries property. Arthur checked his watch. 5 minutes until police arrive. Keep him talking. Nathan raised his voice again. What about the defective components, Reynolds? The ones that killed 4 Marines 5 years ago, still cutting corners to pad the profit margins. Reynolds' corporate mask slipped just slightly. You have no idea how this industry works, Reed. Acceptable failure rates, cost-benefit analyses. These are standard business practices. A few component failures are statistically inevitable. The military accepts those risks. Tell that to the widows, Nathan replied coldly. Tell that to the children who lost fathers because you needed another vacation home. This is your final opportunity, Reynolds snapped, patience evaporating. Return the files, sign non-disclosure agreements, and walk away. or face the consequences. Alexandra stepped forward, her voice carrying across the clearing with unexpected power. Here's a counteroffer, Victor. I have copies of every document showing your involvement in recycling defective components. I have proof you forged Gerald Whitman's signature on authorization forms. I have surveillance footage of your security contractors attempting to abduct a child. She paused, letting each accusation land like a physical blow. Walk away now and maybe I'll ask the prosecutor for leniency. Reynolds' face contorted with fury. He gestured sharply to his men. Take the blind. Secure the evidence and the witnesses. The armed men began advancing across the clearing just as the distant wail of sirens penetrated the forest. Reynolds hesitated, sudden uncertainty crossing his features. Police, Arthur confirmed, checking through the blind's rear window. County and state coming in fast. Reynolds barked orders to his team, who immediately reversed course, retreating toward their vehicles. Reynolds himself remained frozen for a moment, calculating options that were rapidly diminishing. Finally, he too turned and disappeared into the trees. They won't get far, Arthur said with grim satisfaction. Sheriff's Department has roadblocks on every access road. Alexandra sagged against the wall of the blind, tension draining from her body. Lily crept from her hiding place beneath a bench, seeking her father's reassuring embrace. Nathan gathered her close, stroking her hair with a hand that trembled slightly now that the immediate danger had passed. Is it over, Daddy? Lily's voice was small but steady. Nathan looked to Alexandra, both of them knowing the legal battles ahead would be complex and drawn out. But the armed pursuit, the immediate physical threat, that phase appeared to be ending. The scariest part is over, he told his daughter. The rest we'll handle one step at a time. Police secured the area within minutes, escorting Nathan, Alexandra, Lily, and Arthur safely from the hunting blind. Reynolds and 3 of his men were apprehended at a roadblock 2 miles from the property. The remaining security contractors escaped temporarily, but were later captured attempting to cross the Wisconsin state line. Gerald Whitman arrived by helicopter as the scene was being processed, his corporate authority momentarily overshadowed by the gravity of law enforcement response. When he approached Alexandra, his face revealed a mixture of shock, relief, and profound disillusionment. I had no idea, he said, voice thick with emotion. Reynolds has been my right hand for 15 years. Alexandra studied the man who had been her mentor and champion. You never questioned the numbers, the profit margins from recycled components. I trusted him to handle operations while I focused on strategy and growth. Whitman passed a hand over his face. I failed in my oversight, and people died because of it. Not just died, Nathan interjected, keeping Lily close at his side. They were betrayed by the system they trusted to equip them properly. Whitman nodded, accepting the rebuke. The board has called an emergency session. Reynolds will be formally removed, and all contracts involving the components in question are being suspended, pending full investigation. He turned to Alexandra. We need you to lead that investigation with complete autonomy and access. Alexandra glanced at Nathan, an unspoken question passing between them. He gave a slight nod, understanding her need to see this through. I'll do it, she agreed, but on my terms. Nathan joins as special counsel, full immunity for both of us regarding how we obtained the evidence, and corporate funds established for the families of personnel affected by the faulty equipment. Whitman didn't hesitate. Done. As state police escorted a handcuffed Victor Reynolds toward a waiting vehicle, he locked eyes with Nathan across the forest clearing. No words were exchanged, but the message was clear. A battle that had begun 5 years ago in Pentagon meeting rooms had finally reached its conclusion in the northern Michigan wilderness. 3 months later, the Carter Industries boardroom bore witness to the final act of the drama that had begun in a shopping mall. Alexandra stood before the assembled executives and federal officials, delivering the findings of her investigation. Nathan sat nearby, his legal expertise having proven invaluable in navigating the complex intersection of corporate and military procurement regulations. The audit reveals systematic fraud spanning 7 years in 3 corporate entities, Alexandra concluded. 38 defective component types were reintroduced into the supply chain after failing initial safety testing. 17 military and civilian casualties can be directly linked to these component failures. Gerald Whitman, still CEO but now under federal oversight, nodded gravely. And the recommendations: full recall of all identified components, compensation fund for affected personnel and families, corporate restructuring with independent compliance oversight. Alexandra closed her folder. And criminal charges against 13 executives, including Victor Reynolds. The boardroom remained silent as the weight of these findings settled over the assembled group. Federal prosecutors exchanged glances, their cases now solidified by Alexandra's meticulous work. Whitman finally spoke. "We will comply fully with all recommendations. Carter Industries will make this right, whatever the cost." The weeks that followed brought a flurry of legal proceedings, media coverage, and corporate restructuring. Reynolds faced multiple federal charges, while the families of affected military personnel finally received acknowledgement of the systemic failures that had led to their losses. Throughout it all, Nathan and Alexandra worked side by side, their partnership evolving with each challenge overcome. The media labeled them unlikely allies, the corporate executive and the former military lawyer who had brought down one of the largest procurement fraud schemes in recent history. Yet behind the headlines, a different story unfolded, one of quiet evenings helping Lily with homework, weekend trips to the park, and conversations that stretched into the night long after the child had gone to sleep. On a crisp autumn afternoon 1 year after their first meeting, Nathan sat on a bench in the small park near their home, watching Lily draw with chalk on the concrete path. Her artistic talents had blossomed in recent months, encouraged by both her father and the woman who had become a constant presence in their lives. Alexandra appeared settling beside him on the bench. "It's official. Reynolds got 18 years. No possibility of parole for at least 12. Nathan nodded satisfaction, mixing with the knowledge that no prison term could fully compensate for the lives affected. And the families. The first disbursements from the compensation fund went out this morning. She leaned back, watching a leaf spiral down from an oak tree. "Not enough, but something." Lily looked up from her drawing. "Did you win, Ms. Alex?" Alexandra smiled gently. "Justice isn't about winning, Lily. It's about setting things right when they go wrong." The girl considered this with characteristic seriousness before returning to her artwork. Alexandra leaned closer to Nathan, voice lowered. "The Oversight Committee wants you permanently. Full-time position reviewing military procurement contracts." Nathan watched his daughter weighing the offer against the life they'd built. "And you?" "I've been offered a position with the SEC, Corporate Fraud Investigation Unit." She hesitated, vulnerability flickering across her features. "It would mean leaving Carter Industries, starting over." "Sometimes starting over is how we find our way forward," he replied, the words carrying weight beyond their surface meaning. Their hands found each other on the bench between them, fingers interlacing with the ease of shared battles and mutual respect. Beyond them, Lily continued drawing, adding vibrant colors to a world that had once seemed defined only by shades of corporate gray. "She still watches you, you know," Alexandra said softly, learning what it means to stand up when it matters. Nathan's gaze remained on his daughter, his voice barely above a whisper. "And I'm still watching her, remembering why it matters to stand up in the first place." As the afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park, Lily approached with her completed drawing, 3 figures standing together surrounded by splashes of bright color. She offered it to Alexandra with shy pride. "It's us," she explained simply, "our family." Alexandra accepted the drawing, emotion catching in her throat. The word family hung in the air, unexpected, but somehow perfectly right. Nathan's hand tightened around hers, a silent acknowledgement of boundaries crossed and new possibilities emerging. Later, as evening settled over the city, the 3 of them walked home together. Not behind, not ahead, but beside one another. Each step a choice, each moment a question answered through presence rather than words. And somewhere in the distance, beyond the horizon of today's justice, tomorrow's challenges waited. But for now, in the quiet victory of standing still, when it mattered most, they had found something worth protecting, a future colored by integrity, strengthened by courage, and illuminated by the kind of love that asks nothing but offers everything. The kind that changes everything with a single question. "Do you consent?"